Hello everyone, today I will continue to share with you the story of Tusan, a single mother whose journey is quiet yet deeply meaningful. This is not a story of grand achievements or dramatic moments, but one woven from ordinary days, from perseverance, kindness, and the silent choices she has made along the way. Through small details and unhurried steps, Tusan has left very real marks on the lives of children and the people around her. I hope that as you watch this video, you will feel the warmth, sincerity, and the gentle emotions the story carries. And if possible, I hope you will stay with the story a little longer, to listen, to empathize, and to see that sometimes the simplest things hold a far greater power to change than we might imagine. Tusan is a single mother who quietly opens a small, free class for the poor children in her neighborhood as a natural part of her everyday rhythm of life. The decision is not loud, nor is it spoken of as something grand. It comes slowly, quietly, born from her understanding of the shortages and hardships she has witnessed. The classroom is not located in a spacious or well-equipped place, but in a simple, borrowed room she knows well, where daylight slips in through an old window frame and falls in pale streaks across the floor. The space is so modest it could easily be overlooked, yet it is kept with quiet care. Inside the classroom are a few sets of desks and chairs that have been used for many years. The wood has faded, the edges worn down by time. The tabletops are scratched, uneven in places, bleached white in others, carrying traces of many clumsy repairs. The chairs do not match, some higher, some lower, but they're arranged neatly in small rows. Everything is plain, without careful decoration, carrying only a sense of order and sufficiency, much like the way Tusan faces her own life. Each lesson unfolds slowly and quietly. There is no sign hanging outside the door, no loudspeaker or formal introduction, no neatly printed textbooks. On the desks lie thin notebooks already half-used, a few wrinkled sheets of paper, and familiar pens passed from one child to another. Tusan's voice is steady and calm, never raised, never rushed. Each word is pronounced clearly, each syllable carefully sounded out. She often sits down to the children's level, patiently pointing to each line of text, correcting trembling handwriting stroke by stroke, guiding again when needed, repeating the lesson without a trace of impatience. In these simple classes, lack does not appear as an emptiness, but is quietly filled by a persistent wish. It is the wish to help the children learn to read and write, one letter at a time, one line at a time, until familiar symbols slowly become clear before their eyes. There is no pressure, no grand expectation, only small steps taken together, allowing the path to knowledge to gradually take shape through patience, through silent effort, and through the young, unsteady hands learning to hold a pen. Through the children's eager eyes and their still shy smiles, Tusan gradually realizes that the small class is not merely a place for learning letters. In the moments when the children sit neatly at the old desks, their slender shoulders leaning slightly forward, small hands placed carefully on the worn tabletops, eyes fixed on each stroke as it appears on the page, she senses something deeper quietly taking shape. It is not something that can be named right away, nor does it arrive through clear words. Instead, it spreads softly and truthfully, born from their innocent focus, from efforts that are still clumsy yet sincere. Here, each lesson brings more than the slow spelling of first letters. It opens a safe space where the children can sit together without fear of being overlooked. They are called by name in full, waited for when they hesitate, allowed to write wrong and write again, without facing reproachful looks or hurried pressure. When Tusan bends down lower, patiently rereading a sound they stumble over, pointing again to a line where the letters drift, gently guiding each unsteady stroke, she sees in their eyes not only initial curiosity, but a trust that is quietly growing, fragile, yet unmistakable. It is the feeling of being seen, of being heard, of being valued, things that seem small and ordinary, yet mean far more to these children. Eyes suddenly light up when a word is read correctly, timid smiles appear after a line is written well, quick glances are exchanged with the child next to them to compare work, to make sure they have not made a mistake. All of it quietly shows that the classroom offers more than what lies on the pages of their notebooks. In those brief moments, shyness slowly gives way to a sense of safety, and the initial silence is gradually replaced by looks filled with patience and trust. Each time the children lift their heads, their gaze no longer drops as low as before, but carries a fragile confidence, as if they are learning to believe in themselves, little by little. Not through grand affirmations, but through being there consistently, through continuing to learn, being allowed to make mistakes, and being accompanied with patience. Through the quiet, steady presence of the class, they begin to feel that they deserve to learn, deserve to dream, and deserve a better future, a future that does not yet need to be clear or fully drawn, but is enough for them to dare to imagine. To dare to believe that their present circumstances are not the only things that define their worth or the path ahead. Despite exhaustion and the weight of overlapping pressures, Tusan does not allow herself to give up. The difficulties do not arrive all at once or loudly, but accumulate quietly day by day, seeping into her body and spirit through a silent kind of fatigue. There are evenings when she returns home utterly worn out, her legs heavy, her mind spinning with too many unresolved matters. Worries about daily life, about the class, about each child follow one another, refusing to loosen their grip. And yet, whenever she thinks of the small classroom with its familiar faces, of the waiting eyes and the steady presence of the children, she keeps moving forward, as if there is no other option in her heart but to continue. She goes from family to family, knocking on one door after another, some already familiar, others entirely new. Each time, she sits in cramped, modest spaces and listens to the stories of the adults. She hears the very real concerns of parents, the long distance to the class that makes them hesitant, poverty that turns education into a luxury, the doubts that arise when even daily meals are not yet secure. Tusan does not rush to persuade, nor does she rely on grand words or promises beyond her means. She chooses to stay patiently, to speak slowly, to explain each matter with simplicity and sincerity. At times she must repeat herself again and again. At others, she remains silent and waits as the person before her hesitates, hoping only to plant, little by little, a sense of reassurance and the feeling that learning to read and write is not an unreachable path for their children. With the children, she always keeps a gentle voice and a warm gaze. She encourages them to overcome the long distance to class, the shyness of stepping beyond familiar spaces, and the quiet sense of inadequacy that poverty leaves behind. She reminds them that coming to class does not require perfection, nor does it demand immediate success, only that as long as they keep trying, there will always be room to continue. On rainy mornings, on days when the children arrive in worn sandals and threadbare shirts, their steps hesitant at the doorway, Tusan still welcomes them with the same familiar look and the same soft voice. It is through this quiet persistence, step by step, that she keeps the class alive, not through grand gestures or loud strength, but through a silent resolve and a steady faith that refuses to let go in the face of life's most ordinary challenges. Tusan's small classroom gradually becomes known to more people, not through loud appeals or any formal introductions, but through simple word of mouth among those who live close to one another. At first, there are only a few children studying in a modest room, yet that image, young faces bent close to their notebooks, letters still clumsy and uneven, but eyes focused and full of effort, quietly imprints itself in the memories of those who happen to see it. One person tells another, not with flowery words, but with a very natural sense of being moved, as if sharing news of a rare kindness quietly existing in a neighborhood, still marked by hardship. The story of the class spreads slowly, from one alley to the next, from brief conversations on doorsteps to chance encounters along the way. No one calls it something grand, yet it is precisely this quiet persistence that draws attention. And then, little by little, volunteer groups and benefactors begin to find their way there. They do not arrive all at once, but in small waves, bringing with them practical items, brand new books, notebooks still carrying the scent of fresh paper, neatly arranged pens, and clean clothes that fit the children's slender frames. Each visit is gentle and unassuming, no display, no ceremony, simply leaving behind what is needed and departing as if without a trace. These items, ordinary at first glance, carry far greater meaning for the children. They are not just books to study from or clothes to wear, but the feeling of being properly prepared for school for the first time. With the arrival of books and learning supplies, changes in the children unfold softly, almost imperceptibly unless one watches closely. They begin to sit a little straighter, place their notebooks more neatly on the desk, hold their pens with greater confidence. Their handwriting grows less shaky, pages are opened with more care, as if they are learning to value their own learning. The clean, well-fitting clothes bring another quiet change. The children grow less hesitant as they step into the classroom, less inclined to lower their heads when standing beside their peers, less burdened by the sense of being different because of lack. This confidence does not arrive quickly or dramatically, but grows little by little, through each silent lesson that passes, through each moment when they lift their heads a bit more than before. With this support, coming to class gradually becomes a gentler habit. The familiar path no longer feels quite so long, absences grow fewer, and the small classroom continues to light up steadily over time, retaining its original simplicity, yet carrying a warmer, steadier feeling. As more and more quiet hearts remain behind the scenes to support it, the classroom is no longer the quiet effort of Tusan alone, but gradually becomes a place where many compassionate hearts gather around a shared purpose. What began as a small class formed through the silent perseverance of a single mother is slowly enriched by the presence of people who were once strangers. They arrive without appointments, without prior connection to one another, yet when they pause in this modest classroom, each finds a natural sense of kinship, as if they have long shared the same concern. No one comes to the class with grand reasons or formal titles. They speak little of what they have done or how much they can offer. Most simply see something there that is worth caring about, worth giving time to, worth staying for and contributing in their own small way. It is this simplicity of intention that makes the classroom feel close and human, not like help extended from above, but like a circle of people who step in willingly because they choose not to turn away. Each person arrives in their own way. Some come once, linger for a long while, then quietly return on later days. Others observe from a distance, asking gently bit by bit before deciding to step inside. They bring different forms of support, unequal and never compared, yet all rooted in the same unspoken wish, to make the children's path to learning a little less unsteady. Some help with books, carefully arranging new notebooks neatly on the desks. Some pay attention to clothing, making sure it fits well and is clean for the children to wear to class. Others bring no tangible items at all, choosing instead to sit. Ask after the children, listen, and share small but sincere stories. Each presence is gentle, without display or imposition, yet together they gradually create the sense that this classroom no longer stands alone amid familiar hardship. This shared effort does not take away from the classroom's original simplicity. The old desks and chairs remain, the lessons still unfold slowly, and the atmosphere stays quiet and unadorned as it was at the beginning. But within that familiar modesty, another layer of warmth takes shape, warmth born of sharing, of the feeling that many people are looking in the same direction, believing together that the children's education is something worthy of support. In this way, the classroom carries the strength of collective care, of patient hearts choosing to stay, quietly nurturing the dreams of learning for underprivileged children, little by little, through each passing day of silent yet enduring effort. From that small classroom, a larger dream slowly takes shape in Tusan's heart, becoming clearer with each passing day, even though she never speaks it aloud. Whenever she stands quietly watching the children sit crowded together at the old desks, shoulders pressed side by side in the still cramped space, carefully tracing their way through awkward, unsteady letters, that thought returns to her naturally. She begins to imagine another place, not in comparison or complaint, but as a quiet image rising in her mind, a proper school, spacious and safe, where the children can study without worrying about rain or wind blowing in. Where there is enough light for every page to be clearly seen, where each child has a small corner of their own to learn and grow under kind protection. This dream does not arrive impulsively or romantically. It does not appear as a grand resolution from the start, but is nurtured very slowly, almost silently, through the small details of lessons repeated day after day. It grows from afternoons that stretch on until the light outside the window has faded, from moments when she sees the children huddle closer together as the weather turns cold, drawing their hands in as drafts slip through the old room. It comes from fleeting feelings of helplessness when the number of students steadily increases while the space remains the same, making study ever more cramped and inconvenient. These moments do not discourage her, but they're enough to plant in her a persistent thought: the children deserve more than what the present can offer. Tusan understands clearly that providing a better learning environment requires more than kindness or personal effort alone. She sees the very real limits standing before her, things that demand resources, support, and time she does not yet possess. The dream, therefore, does not take on the form of urgency or haste, but exists as an idea carefully held, protected from being wounded by an overly harsh reality. She also knows that the road ahead will be extremely difficult, a road marked by prolonged scarcity, by the limits of individual capacity, and by countless obstacles not yet named or fully imagined. There are moments when, facing these thoughts alone, her heart grows heavy, for the dream of a proper school seems far beyond what someone like her could reach. Yet, just as she once refused to give up on the small classroom at the beginning, this dream continues to live quietly within her, not loudly, not in need of affirmation, simply there as a source of inner strength, allowing her to keep moving forward step by step, carrying a simple belief that the children deserve a better place to learn. Hai is always quietly by Tusan's side, never placing himself in the spotlight, never trying to make his presence obvious to others. He chooses to step back, to remain at just the right distance, to observe, to listen, and to fully understand what she is going through. Every slow step Tusan takes along that challenging path, Hai sees clearly, not with impatience or urgency, but with a quiet, enduring trust. He believes in her choices, believes in the value of what she is doing, and chooses to support her through patient companionship, without asking to be acknowledged. In moments when Tusan is exhausted, when accumulated pressure makes her hesitate or doubt herself, Hai does not try to offer grand advice or impose directions. He simply stays there, sometimes as a calm presence, a knowing look, a brief question that is enough for her to feel she is not alone. His way of being there is not loud, does not take over her space, but is like a silent anchor, steady enough for her to lean on whenever she needs. Hai's trust does not come from promises or from urging her to move faster or do more. It comes from seeing clearly the journey Tusan has walked and continues to walk, a long path filled with fatigue and challenges, built on rare perseverance. He understands that the small classroom is not a momentary act of charity, nor an impulsive decision. It is the result of countless unseen days of effort, of choices repeated in silence, and of a resilience that is difficult to sustain when facing scarcity and doubt. Because of this understanding, when Hai decides to write a post about Tusan, he does not choose a sensational or emotionally charged approach. He writes the way he has always stood beside her, slowly, simply, and sincerely. His piece contains no loud calls for attention, no forceful language or catchy slogans. He merely tells Tusan's story as he has witnessed it, from the earliest days of the small classroom, from the quiet lessons in learning letters, from the perseverance of a woman who chooses to stay with underprivileged children, day after day. Every line of his writing is plain and unembellished, without exaggeration or turning the journey into something grand. Yet, it is precisely this simplicity that holds the deep respect Hai has for Tusan and for what she is quietly building. Within each sentence lies trust, understanding, and a sincere appreciation for a journey that does not need bright lights. In a very natural way, the post becomes an extension of how Hai has always stood beside Tusan, unobtrusive, never taking space, yet steady and present at exactly the right moments. That piece of writing, in its inherent simplicity and sincerity, spread far more powerfully than Hai had ever imagined. Without direct calls to action or carefully polished language designed to stir strong emotions, its plain lines quietly found their way into people's hearts. What readers encountered was not a story told to attract attention, but a real journey unfolding, one shaped by ordinary people, by quiet efforts stretched over years, and by a belief patiently upheld despite countless difficulties. It was this authenticity that kept the piece from passing by too quickly, allowing it to be held onto, read slowly, and then shared from one person to another in a natural and enduring way. As the story reached more people, empathy did not erupt loudly, but formed softly and deeply. Many readers finished it without rushing to comment or express anything, choosing instead to pause in silence, thinking of the small classroom tucked away in some modest corner, where underprivileged children sit learning their letters in a space still marked by lack. They thought of attentive eyes bent over worn notebooks, of Tusan's quiet perseverance, a woman who chooses a difficult path without seeking to be seen or praised. From that gentle touch, a simple desire began to arise in many hearts, to contribute a small part to that still unfinished journey, however modest it might be. And so hands were gradually extended, without any fixed pattern. Support arrived from many directions, in many forms, quietly yet continuously. Some offered financial help so the class could be sustained more steadily, easing the weight of immediate worries. Others contributed materials, desks, chairs, books, things that may seem simple but are essential to a learning space. Some did not have much in terms of material means, but were willing to give their effort, their time, even their professional skills, from repairing the classroom and offering construction advice to helping with organization and teaching. Each form of support was different, unequal, not compared or measured, yet all moved in the same direction. Within this diversity, the small classroom was gradually upheld by multiple layers of support. No single resource stood out as overwhelmingly large, but it was precisely the accumulation of many contributions that created a firmer foundation. Everything came together naturally, without noise, without imposition, without taking away from the classroom's original spirit. From a simple piece of writing, a wider circle of care opened up, where people from different circumstances found a shared point of connection. Within this quiet flow, Tusan's journey was no longer a solitary path. She and the small classroom were strengthened by the kindness of many people from many places, converging around a shared and simple belief that those children deserve to be supported, to learn in better conditions, and to believe that their future can begin from the quiet acts of kindness given without fanfare. Thanks to the community-sustained collective effort, the charitable school is finally completed, standing quietly yet firmly as a tangible result of countless silent efforts gathered over a long stretch of time. It is not a grand or dazzling structure meant to overwhelm at first glance, but a proper, spacious, and safe place, built with genuine care and attentiveness. It offers shelter from rain and sun, frees the children from worry whenever the weather changes, and gives them a place to study in peace, no longer cramped by the familiar sense of tightness and lack. Each wall is built not only from bricks and mortar, but also carries the imprint of days filled with waiting and hope. Every desk and chair set neatly in the classroom evokes the many hands that contributed, directly or indirectly. Each study corner, each small space, holds its own story of those who chose to stay, to believe, and to patiently walk alongside the journey. The school thus becomes not merely a finished structure and form, but a place where countless acts of sharing, from people of different backgrounds and circumstances, have come together. Standing before the school, Tusan cannot hide the surge of emotion rising within her. She stands still for a long time, her gaze slowly moving across spaces that feel both familiar and new, as if she needs more time to be certain that what is unfolding before her eyes is real. A dream that once existed only quietly in her thoughts, kept carefully, almost afraid to be named too clearly, has now taken on a concrete form, present in a way she can touch. In that moment, all the fatigue, worries, and doubts she once carried seemed to return gently, no longer pressing heavily on her shoulders, but blending into a single, overwhelming feeling that is hard to name. For Tusan, this is not simply the completion of a school. It is the realization of a dream she has quietly safeguarded throughout a long journey, through days of perseverance and moments of pushing beyond her own limits. That dream was never spoken aloud, never asserted through grand promises or detailed plans, but nurtured instead through endurance, through quiet faith, and through the companionship of many people who believed in what she believed. In that wordless moment, Tusan understands that what she once longed for is no longer a fragile idea held in her heart, but a living reality, one built from kindness, from sharing, and from the collective belief of an entire community that chose to walk together to the very end of what it means to be kind. The story closes with the image of Tusan standing quietly in a space that has become familiar, yet no longer carries the cramped and deprived feeling of the early days. She does not stand at the center, nor does she try to make herself noticeable among those around her. She simply stands there, calm, unhurried, as if wanting to blend into the ordinary rhythm of the school's daily life. On her face is a natural humility, unforced and unarranged, interwoven with a quiet happiness that is deep and enduring. It is not a joy that spills into broad smiles or visible tears, but a warmth that spreads from within enough to keep her standing still for a long time without saying a word. Tusan's gaze does not turn toward praise or the attention surrounding her. She does not seek looks of recognition, nor does she linger on the congratulations offered in her direction. Instead, she quietly looks toward the children sitting in their classrooms, the children who are laughing, reading, writing, and learning in a space that is safer and far more sufficient than in the earliest days. As she looks at each familiar face, she senses a change that needs no name, straighter postures, brighter eyes, a new ease in small gestures. Everything appears ordinary, yet it fills her with a feeling that is difficult to put into words. In that moment, Tusan gradually realizes that happiness does not come from praise, nor from being named as someone who has done something grand. Any admiration, if it exists, passes quickly, like a fleeting breeze, and is not what she holds onto. What remains deep and unmistakable is the sense of peace that comes from seeing real change take place. It is there when the children are no longer as timid as before, when they dare to lift their heads higher, to read aloud more clearly, to write each line with a fragile yet genuine trust. It is there when letters appear more clearly on the page, and the children's futures no longer feel like something distant and out of reach. Tusan's happiness comes from realizing that the kindness once given quietly, without noise, without display, without expectation of return, has truly touched the lives of many children. Each small act, each moment of choosing to stay, each silent contribution gathered together has created changes that do not need to be proclaimed aloud. And in that quiet understanding, Tusan knows that the greatest value of this journey lies not in how much she has done, or how she has been recognized, but in the fact that those children now have greater opportunities to grow, to learn, and to believe in life in a kinder way enough for kindness itself to continue being passed on, quietly yet persistently, just like the path she chose to walk.
Xin chào tất cả mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Mình đang làm video nha mọi người. Tạm biệt mọi người, hẹn gặp lại mọi người ở video sau.